Hello and welcome to StudyIQ, my dear friends. I am Prashant Mabani. I hope you all are in good. Today is 3rd April 2020. And today I would like to start our discussion with this image that you can see on your screen, right? You can see two emotions on these emojis. One is a sad one, of course, and this one is a happy one. Now, the message that I want to convey here is that one kind of emotion drives out the other. And this is a secret of productivity. If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling lazy, if you're feeling not that great, right, then it's in your hands to switch this emotion, to drive out the negative emotion and put on a positive emotion. Think about it. With this, dear friends, we have some interesting articles on our table today. The first one that we are going to talk about is Safe Forests, Safe People. This one is about zoonotic diseases and what we have done with our environment and the reason why we are facing corona. And this is not the first time that we are facing this coronavirus type of epidemic issue in the past as well. Remember yesterday, the last item was that infographic starting from 1900 something, 1920, starting from Spanish flu till now. I provided you an infographic. So this is not the first time, and it's not going to be the last one either. So the best thing is that we save our environment, we save our ecosystem. We are going to talk about it in detail. The second one is making the private sector care for public health. The things that government should do now. This is the time that we should utilize in preparing ourselves, because lockdown is going to end in next maybe 9-10 days, and then we will be, in an uncharted territory. We don't know what will happen after this lockdown will end. So we need to utilize this time. We have to take on board this private sector as well. And the last one is going to be quarantine and the law. This article is written by a judge, and he is talking about the laws associated with quarantine. He's starting from the history of this quarantine, and some interesting facts are written here in this article. Now, other articles, this one is about OTT. So this one is about Netflix and Prime Video, and there are Hotstar and other applications. So it's about those videos and things, right? So if you have extra time, you can go through it. As far as your examination is concerned, not that important. This one, break from tradition. It's about sports. Wimbledon games are cancelled, of course, because of this coronavirus. And this is not the first game. We were talking about Olympic 2020 Tokyo, remember? So it's quite obvious to understand that that we cannot conduct sports events or any other events. So again, not that it's, if you have extra time, you can go through it, or else you can skip this one. Now this one, looking east to contain COVID-19. Now, as far as I know, we have talked about some best practices by few countries, right? I'm not giving you the name because in the Hindi version of this article, I have asked a question. So I am going to ask you the same question. Can you give me the names of those countries who have done quite well in controlling this coronavirus? Just give me the 3 names, right? 3 names will be more than enough. So basically, this article is talking about best practices of these 3 countries, or a few countries who have managed to rein this coronavirus. So let's move on. Before we move ahead, I would like to introduce all of you to our pen drive and tablet courses, which are available for various different competitive exams. Our pen drive and tablet courses are designed by best faculties of our country. You can purchase them from StudyIQ.com. The good thing is that you can stay at your home. You can, be in this cocoon of your safety cocoon of your home, and you can prepare for various different competitive exams. If you have any further queries, you can give us a call on the numbers that you can see on your screen. To download the PDF of today's lecture, check out my Telegram channel. Please make sure that you share this lecture with other students. Hit the like button if you have learned something from today's discussion, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm going to ask you one more question at the end of this lecture. So let's crack on with this one. Safe forests, safe people. Let me start with this one. On your screen, you can see this Venn diagram, isn't it? You can see this are domestic animals, right? Birds and animals, of course. And then you have this few wild animals, and then we have human beings here. So as you can see, these circles are intersecting with each other. They are overlaying, and they are, they're basically penetrating in each other's territory. And this is something that is happening at present. This coronavirus, like earlier viruses like Ebola, SARS, we have other list of viruses as well. Where here you have Ebola, HIV, severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, Middle East respiratory syndromes, bird flu, swine flu, hantavirus, monkeypox, Lyme disease. All these diseases, and now human beings are facing this sort of diseases because we have entered the zone of wild animals. Now the thing with this zoonotic diseases is that they are safe. There are a few species of monkeys. They have this HIV virus in them, so they can live a normal life. This HIV will not affect these monkeys, but you know how it can destroy our life. If we get, as a human beings, if we get HIV, then it will destroy our life. Nowadays we have some therapies and medicines that will help you live a reasonably okay life, but still it's nothing near to normal or a healthy life. Then we can also see this thing going on that so many things, and sadly in many cultures you find the things that they are consuming, their food habits are very dangerous. Like for example, this Wuhan wet market. Now if you go back in the history, and this is important for you guys to understand the history of China. I'm going to be very brief about this food habits of China. I'm sure many of us are, we feel like it's a very weird thing that they are eating snakes and other things, right? Bats and dogs, and there are so many things. And this is a bit strange, particularly for Indians. But the thing is, if you go back in the history of our country, I'm talking about 1940s, we faced a severe famine. It's known as Bengal famine. World War II was going on. So basically British Raj, means food was available, but to make sure that there is no food shortage for soldiers, British Raj, they basically diverted this food supplies, and Bengal was left with no food. And at that point of time, lakhs of people, they passed away because they were not getting, they were starving. They died because of starvation. Fortunately, after independence, India has never seen any sort of famine. So that's a very good, or I would also say that that's an achievement for our country too. But if you go through China, then China has gone through many famines. After 1950s as well, China has gone through, if I'm not wrong, I think 3 famines. I have to check the fact, but this thing that I'm sharing with you, I have read about it a few years ago. So when I was going through this, when I'm speaking to you, when I was going through this Hindi, when I was recording the Hindi version of this lecture, this thing suddenly came, popped up in my mind. So I thought, let me share these things with you guys. So this is something spontaneous. So if I'm not wrong, China has gone through 3 famines. So keeping these famines in mind, the Chinese government decided that it should allow people to hunt from the nearest forest so that people don't die because of starvation. So this incident, this famine, is one of the main reasons why you find this sort of wet markets and other things. But it's a very dangerous territory. Underlying factors are that the destruction of forests and trapping or farming wild species has brought these animals closer to humans, and the viruses they harbor find ready hosts in domestic animals moving to humans. What is happening now, as I told you, like a few HIV and this other kinds of viruses, they are okay. A few animals, they have those viruses, and these animals can live a very normal life. But what is happening, these animals are coming in contact with our domestic animals, or they are coming directly in contact with human beings, or people are consuming them. So this virus, they have found a bridge. This virus is from these animals. Now they have found a new host. The new host is human beings, and for us, these viruses are dangerous. And this is the main thing that is going on. This whole coronavirus thing. It all started with this Wuhan wet market. So it is important for us to understand this thing, that biodiversity in forests harmlessly retains dangerous viruses and other pathogens among a vast pool of wild animals away from people. But when we human beings, when we enter this biodiversity, when we play around with or fool around with this this ecosystem, this nature's ecosystem I'm talking about, right? This big ecosystem. Because if you go in a tropical jungle, right, from a distance you feel like it's just about big trees. But when you actually enter a tropical jungle, you will realize that biodiversity is not just about big jaguars and leopards and lions and tigers, right? Of course, you don't find lions in tropical jungles, but this is just an example. So in tropical jungles, if you go, you will find so many tiny insects as well, right? And then you will find big trees, you will find big mammals, and then you will find small organisms that you cannot even see with your naked eyes. But the most important thing is that all these big and small species, right, size doesn't matter, all of them, they have a role to play. And if we disturb this species, right, it's not like they are doing this thing on purpose, but this is how it works. As human beings, we have to understand this thing, that the way we have destroyed our environment, we have, means we have paid too much attention on economical development. And this is a wake-up call for humanity, that if we will play around with this sort of, if we will not take ecosystem that seriously, then we may face this sort of consequences in future as well. So this should serve as a dire warning to the government that hasty permissions granted for new roads, dams, mines and power projects in already enfeebled forests can unleash more scourges. This is a clear warning. In pristine forests with diverse species, keep viruses virtually bottled up out of man's way. But if we unbottle them, then we have to face the consequences as well. Second one is making the private sector care for public health. We know that we are in second week of this national lockdown, and we are not sure what will happen after this lockdown is removed. We don't know whether lockdown will be extended. We don't know, right? As far as I know, government has said that means the government is not going to extend this lockdown. But if you go through yesterday's news, I'm talking about international news, and if you go through our channel StudyIQ, then you'll find that one of my colleague, Anirudh, has delivered a lecture on second wave of coronavirus hits China. So the Hubei province of China that was under lockdown, now this lockdown is removed, and you can find new cases are popping up in this Hubei province. So this is a wake-up call for the whole world, and I'm not sure what's going to happen tomorrow or after this lockdown is over, but I think we need to utilize this time that we have. As far as this lockdown is under implementation, what we need to do is we need to boost our capacity. So that is one of the most important thing. I want you guys to hold this thing, this thought in your mind, that we need to boost our capacity. We'll talk about it as we move ahead. Now, our country is still under lockdown, and as we know from the news that are coming from various different parts of our country, we are facing resource constraints. Government hospitals alone will not be able to manage the fallout. We need to rope in private sector or private hospitals as well. What is the need of the hour? The need of the hour is we need a preparedness plan that will address all levels of care, both in public and private sector. For that, we would need infrastructure, number one thing. Second is equipment. Third is testing facilities. And the fourth is personnel, or you can say human resources, medical personnel, and other supporting staff. So far, the central and state governments have given a little indication of bringing in increase in public expenditure on health. Government has released some money, government has talked about releasing some money, but as far as increasing expenditure on health is concerned, government has not issued any sort of advertisement based on this thing. As far as roping private hospitals are concerned, some states have already started doing this thing, like Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh. They have already roped in private sector hospitals to provide free treatment. Earlier on, when government was announcing this relief package, I think, if I'm not wrong, finance minister said that we will cover this testing expenditure. This testing and treatment of COVID-19 will be included under this Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. But anyway, if it was her or finance minister or someone else, I'm not sure. But the main thing is the National Health Authority has recommended this thing, and government has indicated as well. Government has said about this thing, but a proper, you can say, clearance, or you can say official clearance, or this proposal is still waiting clearance. So this is something that we need to do as soon as possible. It should get a green signal, because a test, coronavirus COVID-19 test, will cost you 4,500 rupees per test. And this is not a small amount. Very few of us will be able to afford this test. Just imagine if you have like 5 members, and if you are from a poor family, then you have no choice, right? Means you cannot afford this thing. So it is important that this test all across the board throughout our country is made free. It should be covered under this Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. As I told you, it should get a green signal from the government. And before the lockdown is lifted, as we have talked about this thing earlier as well, we need to pump up our facilities, infrastructure, equipment, testing facilities, and human resources. Because after lifting this lockdown, we will enter into an uncharted territory. We don't know what will happen. We have just one example of China. And if I'm not wrong, a few cases in Singapore were also observed. Singapore has overall maintained, it has dealt with this coronavirus very well. But over there as well, they have found few new cases. So we have to be very careful. Lockdown, once it is lifted, it's not like you can have a free run. You have to be very careful. You have to tread carefully. Government should take over private corporate laboratories and hospitals for a limited period. We have rules and regulations about it as well. Spain has done the same thing. The Spanish parallel. The Spanish government issued an order bringing hospitals and large private corporate sector under public control for a limited period. We can do the same thing. In India, private corporate hospitals have in the past as well received government subsidies in various forms, and it is now time to seek repayment from them. And one thing that I would like to add here is that I would say that government should make payments on time to these private hospitals. The reason why I'm saying that we need to make these payments on time is because in future, just imagine if now you are, by your authority, if you're taking over these private hospitals, they don't have any option as well. They have to share their facilities with the government, right, as per the law. But if you don't pay them their expenses, right, they are going to face huge losses. And this will, leave a very bad taste as far as this relationship of private and public hospital is concerned. The second thing is, in future, God forbid, but if we have this sort of pandemics in future, then we will not get that good support from private hospitals. Already we see so many cases, and we hear about these things that under this Pradhan Mantri, not particularly Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, but various different states, they are running their own state level health insurance scheme, or a sort of support scheme. And we find that many private hospitals, they complain that they are not getting payment on time from government. So they have to go through this bureaucracy and so many things. So if government is going to take over these private laboratories and private hospitals, then it has to make sure that it pays them enough money. If not profit, then at least their expenses should be covered. And minimum expenses should be covered, and it should be paid on time. This is the most important thing. Moving on to this interesting article written by a judge. He is talking about quarantine and the law. So it was about 196 years ago, back in 1824, that a judge of USA, in fact, the Chief Justice of USA, John Marshall, affirmed the powers of the state to enact quarantine laws and impose health regulation. It was this quarantine rules and regulations got a green signal from USA's Supreme Court judge back in 1824, Justice John Marshall. And since then, we have seen that the world has adopted, world has gone through various different health emergencies. Yesterday, we were talking about this. I provided this infographic, remember? So, in last 100 years as well, I think 6-7 times this type of emergencies we have gone through. So quarantine is something new for us. It might be a new word for us as well. Many of us, like for I was not aware about, to be honest, this word quarantine, right? I came across this word a few weeks ago when this started coming up in news, because this is not something that you hear that regularly. So quarantine is considered the oldest mechanism to reduce the rapid spread of bacterial infections and viral onslaughts, and it has been legally sanctioned as well by all jurisdictions in the world. And in ancient times as well, quarantine type of thing was used, like isolation was used. And now there is a sort of difference between isolation and quarantine. What it is, I'm going to explain it to you. So early on in ancient times, they used to use this maritime quarantine as well. So a person was, was kept on a boat, and of course that boat was kept away from the land, so that the disease, once that disease is over, so that person will, be far away from the large population. And it is also believed that it is considered as one of the best way to keep a disease at bay. So it is medically accepted as well. It was in 1377, Great Council in 1377, when this plague was creating havoc in European countries. It came out with this first medical isolation law. Now, detention for medical reasons was justified, and disobedience was made punishable under this law of 1377. And we can see in our today's time as well, if you are disobeying, then there is a punishment for disobeying this sort of rules. Now, this word has Latin roots. You have this, if you are in a sort of isolation for 30 days, then it is called Trentino. And if you are for 40 days under isolation or prescribed isolation, then that is called quarantine. Now, there is a difference between quarantine and isolation. I'm being a bit technical here. That's what I found in this article. So quarantine is imposed to separate and restrict the movement of persons. It's about more than one person who may have been exposed to infectious disease but not yet known to be ill. So it's a sort of safety measure. It's done. You are not exactly infected by a disease, but chances are that you will, or you may, or it's not yet known. So quarantine is for more than one person. Isolation is for individuals. So isolation is a complete separation from others of a purpose known or reasonably believed to be infected with communicable diseases. So we have a case of 1990 human immunodeficiency virus. A person working with WWF, that is World Wildlife Fund, he got this HIV, and he was kept for 64 days in isolation. So this case was, it reached Bombay High Court in 1990. And in 1990, the High Court said that this is a serious infringement of basic human rights guaranteed to that individual. But this isolation is justified by keeping in mind, this public health. By keeping large public health in mind, government said, or not government, but the court said that this solitary detention is okay. Normally, solitary detention is only for few weeks. As far as I know, I'm not an expert in this subject, but as far as I know, solitary detention is not given for more than a few weeks, because if you keep a person in isolation for a few weeks, then chances are that he will go lunatic, he will lose his mental balance. And this is something that is in modern punishments, this sort of things are not done. So such isolation, undoubtedly, this solitary isolation is it may have serious consequences. A person may lose everything. Economic conditions may deteriorate as well. But when it comes to individual liberty and public health, of course, public health is given more priority. And this is the reason why we have individual rights, fundamental rights, but when it comes to public health, under a few rules and regulations, like Epidemic Disease Act in 1897 was introduced in India by British Raj. And we amended this 1897's law in 1956. So this amendment gives this power to central government to impose restriction in whole or any parts of our country. And we have one case of 2014 as well, not from our country but from USA. a lady called Cassie Hickox. She was a nurse and a health worker, and she was kept quarantined. She was quarantined when she came back from Africa because she got this Ebola disease. So not Ebola disease, but because she was serving those patients who were affected by Ebola. So when she came back, she was quarantined, and her peers were not happy about this thing. But in US as well, they have this rule. So government said that we have to keep this thing. We have to quarantine her to save people. To make sure that this Ebola does not spread in USA. So that's basically everything, and this article is written by a judge. So basically he is also, at the end you find this thing that the Supreme Court has played its role. Supreme Court has directed all these prisons like Tihar and other prisons that if you are getting new prisoners, then the new prisoner should be kept in isolation for 3 days, and if he is okay, then only you can merge him with other prisoners, and social distancing should be practiced in jails as well. That's what Supreme Court has said. Now let's go through some news items, important news items. Second video conference was conducted by Prime Minister. He had an interaction with the chief ministers, and Prime Minister told them to come out with some formula or something so that we can have a common exit strategy. Common exit means exiting this lockdown. Now lockdown is going to be a bit challenging, and he said that we need to have separate hospitals for COVID-19 patients, so every state should ensure that we have them. We need to have dedicated human resources as well. He talked about harvesting season, which is going on. So all those people who are working in field, they have to maintain this physical distancing too. Centre would release 11,000 crore rupees. That's what Prime Minister Modi said. As far as money is concerned, few states are complaining. They are not happy with it. Rajasthan Chief Minister has said that central government should release 1 lakh crore rupees. This money should be distributed based on the population of the state, the number of cases a state is handling, and it can also add to GST Council's guidelines in sharing this money. Bihar Chief Minister said that they have asked for, their demand was 10 lakh N95 masks, but they received just 50,000. They asked for 5 lakh PPE. PPE basically means this personal protection equipment kits, but they received just 4,000, and they asked for 100 ventilators, but they received none. So this is something that is not fair. That's what Bihar Chief Minister has said, and he said that some 1,70,470 people have come from various different places into Bihar. Haryana Chief Minister has said that they have started telemedicine services. Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister has said that they have dedicated hospitals in Bhopal and Indore for COVID-19 patients. He also said that alternative medicines are also given. Alternative treatment is provided to people for boosting immunity and providing this alternative treatment to those people who are affected by it. Odisha Chief Minister said he raised this query that is there any possibility of the lockdown being further or extended any further, and other chief ministers as well. They were also wondering about the same question, that are we going to have an extension with this lockdown? But as far as I know, at present we don't know exactly, right? There is no clear yes or no. It's all about wait and watch. 9,000 with the Tablighi Jamaat link sent into quarantine. Geofencing app will be used to locate quarantine violators. So we can use this Indian Telegraph Act. Government is going to use this, and it will locate your locations. And geofencing is accurate up to 300 meters. So if you are under quarantine, if you are ordered, if quarantine is imposed on you, then you have to stick at your home. If you go out, then chances are that you will get caught, and if you get caught, then there are punishments for it. Virus cases double in India in 5 days. That's a matter of concern. 2,069 cases. And case filed against a Gurudwara as well. Majnu ka Tilla Gurudwara, and 200 people were stranded here. It's very sad that this sort of cases are coming up, and DRDO develops a biosuit sealant for safety gear. So this is how it will look, and it has a special glue that this DRDO is producing. And I have a question for you, last one. Yesterday we were talking about this Nord Stream 2. So I told you about a country called Denmark. So can you give me the capital of Denmark? What is the capital of Denmark? And give me the name of those country or countries who are sharing border or borders with this Denmark. I'm talking about land borders. Border or borders, particularly land boundary, right? So these are total 3 questions. First one, I asked you about the countries who have dealt with coronavirus very efficiently and effectively. Second one is this Denmark capital, and the third one is border question. And that's everything. I'll see you with daily financial news analysis. PDF of this lecture is available right now if you check out my Telegram channel. And that's it. I'll see you soon. God bless you all. Jai Hind.